times of crisis. Three billionaires possess more wealth than the bottom half of society. An eviction crisis has plagued the nation. More than 140 million people were poor and low income before the COVID-19 pandemic.
To try to sustain our quest for integrity, honesty, and decency.
The projected crisis will be the most severe economic downturn since the Great Depression. The USA spends more on war than the next 10 countries combined. The climate crisis is an existential threat to humanity. The impacts could be irreversible by 2030.
George Floyd died here, and that's why you still have this massive memorial filling this intersection behind me. And even in the rain, people are coming out to see it.
Did you just see that? Like that was about a 5-minute clip right there. And in 5 minutes, essentially, they just did better than if you take all the best parts of the RNC or take all the best parts of the DNC. I mean, they just absolutely put it to shame. In 5 minutes, I mean, they were hitting on the actual, the core issues that are damaging the masses of people, and they spoke on to not just social issues but real economic pain in this country. They hit on wealth inequality. I mean, they centered poverty in a way, and this is just a 5-minute clip, but they centered poverty in a way that I have not seen from the DNC or the Democratic Party in my lifetime. Essentially, it's as if they've forgotten. They all still preach to the middle class. They completely ignore the working poor, and which are the masses of people. And so this really centered working class and poor people in a way that was so refreshing. It was so refreshing compared to the DNC and just the platitudes and nothing. It's just emptiness. I watched about 30 minutes straight. of the DNC. It was all I could bear. It was all I could bear to take. It was just over 30 minutes. And in 30 minutes, I did not see a single mention of policy. In fact, I saw one guy on there who said, policy matters, but he literally said it. So, I mean, that was just so refreshing. So that was energizing and already right out of the gate. So this is how it started. And I'm going to be playing these clips pretty much in the order that they were presented in, just because I think it provides a timeline. Some of them reference the previous speaker. So in case you hear a reference to a previous speaker, hopefully you'll have the context. So I do intend to play these clips in order. And so I just wanted to cut in here and say, that was just such a refreshing take and just real. It was real. And it hit on, the climate crisis in a real, actual, meaningful, substantive way. Talked about the fact that the IPCC report essentially referencing that about having only, they gave us 12 years from 2017, which is 2029. So they referenced 2030 being, irreversible and irrevocable damage being done to our climate by 2030. And so, I mean, just right out of the gate, they're touching on the actual reality for the masses of people in a way that neither party has for my lifetime, in the entirety of my life. I mean, some of them have been okay at sort of, pandering to those issues in certain ways, but I have not seen this kind of rhetoric from the Democratic Party. They've become the party of the sort of like Hollywood professional managerial class, college educated suburbia. Like that's what they're going after. And they're even like targeting like that 8% of like moderate Republicans while ignoring and spitting in the face, I believe, of the 40% of progressives in the party. And they continually just spit in our face and punch us in our face and say, oh, you got nowhere else to go. There's this great clip. I should have had it queued up, but there's a great clip of Lawrence O'Donnell speaking. He was in a documentary. It was recorded for a documentary on Ralph Nader. And he talked about how he used to work in the Democratic Party. And he said, I was a part of the Democratic Party. I worked in the Democratic Party. He said, we did not have to listen to the left because the left had nowhere to go. And so he said, the only thing that you can do to gain power in the Democratic Party is to withhold your vote. He said, you must show them that you are capable of withholding your vote. So I know that's not a popular opinion on, like even on the left, honestly. And I'm not saying don't vote. I'm saying, maybe we start to look elsewhere. Now, I get it. This year, people feel like it's unique. They think that Trump is just a unique monster. I happen to not believe that he's a unique monster. I think that we've had plenty of folks just like him. And again, in my lifetime, I've seen George Bush. I mean, George Bush took us into the war, in Iraq. And I don't know. He has slightly better rhetoric. I mean, he did all that damage in murdering and committed, so many war crimes while saying nice things about how we shouldn't, hate all Muslims, but creating the atmosphere for Islamophobia to fester in this country. So sure, they'll have slightly better rhetoric than Trump, but I kind of like that Trump says the quiet part out loud, because then people pay attention. And also he just cuts right through it and just, he'll just say it like, oh, Muslim ban, they'll do it with really sneaky, smart policy. Trump's a moron, and he'll just say it out loud. So in those ways, I think that Trump is less effective as a statesman. And so there are places where I just don't see him as bad as some other leftists. And so I know this is a disagreement on the left, not trying to push anyone away here. This is what I love to hear, the differing opinions. I respect everybody's opinion. That's democracy right there. We all get to cast our vote for whoever we want. I'm not shaming anyone for however they're voting. I'm simply stating my position and also doing my best to try to, convince people to maybe be sympathetic or, to the cause and maybe join forces from right now. And so I honestly, I'm not too concerned about how people are voting in November. I mean, I don't think that I'm personally voting green. I live in Massachusetts. It's not a swing state, but honestly, if I were living in a swing state, I would still be voting green. I simply have to vote my conscience. I can no longer vote against my values any longer. And so I would be voting green no matter where I was in the country. And so that's my position, but I respect everyone's position on this. And I get why I totally understand why some people see Trump as a unique threat, neo-fascist. I mean, Cornel West and Noam Chomsky are voting for Biden, and I respect the hell out of those folks. And there are so many more. Angela Davis. I mean, we saw a great quote from Angela Davis there. And even Angela Davis is voting for Biden, make no mistake. But and she's a greater, she's a revolutionary. She is done more for moving forward the cause of human rights than I ever will be able to do in my entire life. And so I have nothing but the utmost respect for her, Cornel West, Nina Turner, who I think is voting for Biden. We'll find out. She talks about this stuff. Even Marianne Williamson and some other folks. Like, I respect their position. But this is just something that I've just grown tired of, with the voting of lesser of two evils. And that's why this People's Party and People's Convention has been so invigorating and refreshing to watch, because it really is trying to create a major third party. And for folks that aren't aware, I mean, they are looking to create a new party, a new third party, and not just a third party, but a major political party to oust one of these political parties, obviously, likely the Democratic Party, but could be, let's gain power where it's across the spectrum. Even if you're a right-leaning person, I think that there's a place for you in the People's Party, because it's about working class, fighting for working class rights, fighting for labor. That's probably you, even if you hold right-wing views. We can, quibble about certain things later, but let's focus on the substantive issues that are damaging our lives, all of our lives, and try to build some solidarity, across the spectrum. Obviously, it will be heavily left leaning, but it's across the spectrum. And there's a lot of people who self-identify as right wing or conservative or even centrist. I used to 5 years ago. When you actually ask them about the issues, they're progressive. They're left. They're of the left. They support left-wing policies. If you poll on things like Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, $15 minimum wage, these things are just legalizing cannabis. I mean, these things are just people, you ask them about the issues and people lean left.